As the state's leading property and casualty insurance trade association, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance plays a crucial role in safeguarding Wisconsinites. Alliance members provide vital insurance coverage, ensuring financial protection for individuals, businesses, and communities across the state. In times of need, they act as a reliable resource, helping residents recover from unforeseen events. Ultimately, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance and its members contribute to the resilience and well-being of Wisconsin families and businesses by offering essential protection and support. WisI video of the WisPolitics Madison Luncheon series at the Madison Club is made possible with sponsorship support from the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the May edition of the WisPolitics Luncheon at the Madison Club. I want to thank our sponsors with whom we couldn't do this series. Hush Blackwell Strategies, with us from the very beginning under various names, but thank you very much. American Family Insurance, XL Energy, Walmart, ARP Wisconsin, and Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. This is when everybody wildly applauds for the sponsors. And we have to thank the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance, which is sponsoring the video done by Wisconsin Eye. So thanks to Wisconsin Insurance Alliance and Wisconsin Eye. Yes, once again, this will just be a series of announcements. There is no program today. Sorry, Greta, no. The next events here in Madison are June 11th. We're going to have two UW-Madison political scientists talking about the conventions on June 11th. And then on June 20th, we're going to have the new PSC chair, Summer Strand, to talk about the energy transition. So June 11th and June 20th. So put those on your calendar. Other events can be found at WisPolitics.com. So now we do have a program today because we have a guest, a good guest. We have Greta Neubauer, the Assembly Democratic leader from Racine, and who hopes to be speaker someday. So welcome, Greta Neubauer. So I was talking to the representative before about my memories of her dad. So this proves I indeed am old. I covered her dad when her dad was in the state assembly. Her dad never became speaker because Tom Loftus was in that role. And before Robin Voss, he was the longest serving speaker in Wisconsin history. And so maybe Jeff Neubauer never got a chance to run for speaker. But he did become state party chair. I don't know whether that was a consolation prize or not. But but I was talking about, you come from a very political family, and what that means in sort of how you got into it and how you see your role going forward.
Sure. Well, first of all, good to be here with you all. Thanks so much for coming, and thank you, of course, to WisPolitics and Jeff for having me. So I did certainly grow up around politics. My dad was in the legislature. My mom worked in the Capitol. And then while I was growing up, they stayed involved. And that often looked like talking a lot about politics at home and also knocking on doors, really starting at a very young age in local races, helping with the Barack Obama campaign. I ran Racine High School Students for Obama when I was 16. And my mom ran for judge for the first time when I was in high school as well. So my siblings and I would go out and knock on doors with and for my mom, which of course was a really formative experience. I then went kind of into social movement work as a college student and a few years after, particularly in the climate change space with young people. And then as I watched Wisconsin help deliver Donald Trump to the White House, recognized that the work was so important. The work happening locally was so important. And started working for Corey Mason, now Mayor Corey Mason in the Capitol, and then ran for that seat when it opened up.
Okay, so when you first became a Democratic leader, there probably wasn't a lot of competition for that job at that point. I mean, Democrats were deep in are deep in the minority. And now here you are, I mean, if not this cycle, maybe the next cycle or a couple cycles down the road could be the next speaker. So I'm just wondering how that feels. You know, you took on a role that maybe not very many people wanted, and now, wow, now you're in the middle of, you know, a real statewide campaign.
Yeah, it's just an incredibly exciting time. And soon after I was elected, I arrived at the Capitol, I was working on bills, I was, talking to colleagues, and it became extremely clear that our number one priority had to be getting new maps and had to be competing for a majority. With the maps that we had, where Republicans were more likely to get a supermajority than Democrats were to get a majority in a 50-50 state, it was really tough to govern. It was really tough to get things done in the Capitol and to move policy forward that reflects the will of the people of this state. But it is a new time. After many years of hard work on behalf, by many people, we do have 50-50 maps, and we have a huge opportunity ahead. And I know folks across the state are really excited about that.
All right, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the maps, you mentioned the veto-proof majority. So there were veto overrides in the Republican State Senate this week, which has a supermajority, but the Republicans are just shy in the Assembly, and they didn't even try to do any veto overrides. So that's because...
Well, as some may be aware, our Democratic members in the Assembly were in Madison a lot over the last year and a half. We just narrowly prevented a Republican supermajority 2 years ago. We won 2 seats that were necessary to prevent that supermajority, and so it was always extremely close. And we worked really hard over the course of the last year and a half to ensure that everyone was in Madison whenever a veto could possibly be taken up. That meant members being in Madison in their offices isolating when they had COVID sometimes, missing family birthday parties and funerals. We could not afford to have anyone not be here.
Because it's the number of members present.
Right. And so we needed to have our 35 at all times, and people worked really, really hard to do that. Our members were here yesterday until 6 p.m. to finish out the last day of the veto review period, and we are now able to say that we got through the entire session with no veto overrides.
Okay, so that's a big organizational effort, and now you're on to the campaign's full throw, and you're out there recruiting. But the thing that puzzles me is here's Democrats, after all these years in the minority, have a chance to get to the majority, and then a lot of people are retiring or running for other offices. So by my count, 15 of the 22 people who are leaving the Assembly are Democrats. So explain that to me. How come so many Democrats are leaving?
We should go through those numbers again. But there are a number of folks, of course, who are retiring. I would point to maybe a Todd Onstead, right, who's served his community, Kenosha area, for a number of years, done really great work, and frankly has earned some time with his family. We have a couple of those folks. We have a lot of people who are running for other offices. We've got some folks who were just elected in spring elections, a number who are running for Senate and Congress. And we have always been really proud in the Assembly that we are the bench for Democrats running statewide. We have Senator Tammy Baldwin and our Congress people, Mark Pocan and Gwen Moore, Executive David Crowley, Mandela Barnes, all former Assembly members. And that's a really good thing. And it's a good place for people to learn the ropes and to get experience running for office and then to go on and run for higher office. So we're really proud of those folks, of course, wishing them success. And with the folks who continue on, we're gearing up for a huge year, which I know we'll talk more about. But everyone who's staying understands that there are really high expectations, not only holding their own seats, but going out and helping folks across the state as we work to flip 15. Preparing to be governing, which is going to be different. We actually only have one member of the Assembly Democratic Caucus, Chris Sinicki, who was here when Democrats were in the majority. So it is going to be a big shift for us. And we, of course, are looking to neighboring states and folks who have been in Democratic majorities previously to learn those lessons and to be prepared. But we're in good communication with Michigan, where they had about a 50% new caucus, and then, of course, went on to pass really consequential bills as soon as they achieved their trifecta.
Okay, so, but doesn't that make your job harder, all these people leaving?
I mean, it's more recruiting, right? We had to recruit a ton of folks. The retirements that we have are not in the most competitive seats. Our two seats that we really consider to be places where we need to focus on protecting our incumbents are Steve Doyle, La Crosse area, and Jody Emerson in Eau Claire. She's got a more competitive seat than she has in the past. Those folks are running again. They're gearing up. Steve Doyle, of course, had competitive races year after year, and he is putting himself back on the ballot, and we're really pleased to see that. The other retirements that we have are in pretty blue seats that we're confident we can hold.
Okay, so where does it come down to? I mean, how do you get to the majority? What's the path? Is it or a certain region? Is it a certain set of seats? How are you viewing it?
Sure. So one of the really good things about the new maps is that there are competitive seats all across the state. In the last couple of cycles, there were really only a handful of seats that could be called truly competitive, right? Going to be decided by just a couple of percentage points. Under these maps, there are 10 seats that, if you layer on Joe Biden's results from 2020, would be decided by 2 percentage points on either side, so a plus or minus 2. Those are all extremely competitive seats that both sides have a real chance of winning. We need to win 7 of those 10 seats to get the majority. That's 49 seats that Joe Biden would win under those maps, plus 1 additional. Evers, his results in 22 would lead to 52 Democratic seats. So the path is there. We all know this. I'm sure you all, more so than most probably, have dug into the details of these maps and know that they are extremely competitive. And they really prioritize a lot of seats that are in that margin, where voters really will be able to determine the outcome of this election by showing up or staying home. And we don't have a map behind us today, but I love to look at that map of the competitive seats that we have across the state. They're in La Crosse, they're in Green Bay, they're in Eau Claire, they're in the Driftless, they're in the Milwaukee suburbs. Those, of course, also happen to be places that are really important for the rest of the ticket, where we've got important congressional races, and those folks at the top of the ballot need to perform well. But those seats right there at the margins, it's likely that the 50th seat for us would be Wausau, a seat that is really exciting for that community because they were extremely gerrymandered and did not have the opportunity to participate in really competitive local elections previously. We have an amazing candidate running there in Yiling Zhang. He's a Hmong leader and been in elected office since he was in high school. Just an incredible person who is running a really strong campaign. Check out the New York Times profile of him from his announcement day. And then there's a seat in Green Bay, very similarly competitive, Christy Welch, in the 88th. She comes from a family business background, manufacturing. She's worked really hard locally, gotten to know kind of all the active folks in that area, and she's running a very competitive race. The other one that's right there in terms of the numbers, these 3 seats, Trump won by about 0.5 percentage point, is the Hudson area seat. Again, a seat that was reconstructed to be competitive under these new maps. And we've got Allison Page running there. She was a nurse and hospital administrator, school board member, mom, is really, really excited that seat, Hudson River Falls, is one that is going to be extremely competitive this year.
Are you going to have candidates in all 99?
Yes, that's the plan. Folks are collecting signatures right now to get on the ballot by June 3rd. Still finalizing a couple folks in those really red seats. But of course, excited to have people running everywhere. I think it's really important that voters do have a choice. And we also know that people knocking on doors is critically important for the whole ticket. We understand that to be part of our work in the Assembly. Our candidates are able to actually get out and knock on the doors of every person that they need to vote for them. And those are really persuasive conversations, particularly for the voter who's a little disillusioned, who might not want to show up this year. they have a great conversation with Yi in Wausau, and he is inspiring to them, and they believe that he is going to do good things when he's elected in the state assembly, they're going to show up to vote, and then they're probably going to vote for the entire ticket as well.
Wouldn't it be easier just to concentrate on the seats you got to win?
Of course, we have a strategy for where we put resources and our time, right? We're going to be putting more energy on those seats that we need to get the majority than we are on the places where we think it's going to be difficult to win this year. But we have baseline support working with the state party for every single one of those candidates so that they're able to run real campaigns and, again, uplift the Democratic message and make clear that Democrats have a path plan to improve people's lives in the state.
Okay, so that's going on with the Senate, too. There's a Senate candidate in each
Yes.
for Democrats. Okay, this is part of the bottom-up strategy to make sure that there's a way to get turnout everywhere.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and as you said, right, we're not spending the same resources everywhere. So last time, Steve Doyle's race, again, incredibly close in the La Crosse area. We spent about $1.2 million on the hard side on that race, not to mention soft side spending. We now have about 15 really competitive seats where we anticipate spending around $1.2 million, sometimes more than that. So our budget is significant this year. We have to be very focused on those seats that we think we can win. And it is our plan to go out and raise the dollars we need to do that. We're working very closely with the state party, with the governor, with the Senate to maximize the dollars coming in to the state legislative races. And thus far, that's going extremely well.
Okay, well, I mean, that Doyle seat is going to cost more than 1.2. I mean, that's probably going to be a $2 million seat.
Very well.
I mean, for a state assembly seat, which is, I think, amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So let's just multiply that times, across the board there. I mean, we're talking tens of millions of dollars.
Yes.
So, but the state party is well-heeled these days, and they'll be assisting, I'm sure.
Yes, we are really lucky to have an amazing state party in Wisconsin. We have a really close relationship with Ben Wickler, and he has always been very focused on the legislature. He knows that we are not going to be able to get good policy done in Wisconsin without Democratic majorities. And so he is putting a huge amount of time and energy into raising dollars that will help assembly candidates as well.
Okay, well, what about some of the, I guess, the statewide atmospherics that are going on? I mean, we were crucial in the presidential race. Tammy Baldwin's running. You have at least a couple of congressional districts that are going to be targeted, at least initially. So how is that coordinated with the races that you folks are all running?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we, of course, talk to the other teams who are supporting those folks as much as we're able to. And our candidates are really trying to have good relationships with those other folks who are on the ballot so that they can get canvassers out knocking on doors for that entire ticket. So in the third CD in western Wisconsin, we have a lot of races there that overlap with that congressional district. There's, of course, a Democratic primary there, but those folks are already helping us ensure that every one of those one of those assembly seats is filled with a Democrat, and working to make sure that those are good candidates who are going to run real campaigns and help the entire ticket. So the coordinated campaign, of course, is a big piece of this, run by the state party. We've got, I think, fair to say, the best in the country, doing year-round programming in Racine. We have multiple organizers who have been on the ground for a while, getting volunteers out there, talking to voters outside of just September and October, which is really important. The conversations we have with voters right now about the issues, about what Democrats have done in our communities, about what we are going to do, are really persuasive, and those are the kind of conversations that are harder to have on October 25th.
Okay, so first off, on your 99 seats, how far along are you on your goal there to get somebody in each?
We're really close. I can't give you an exact number because we're at that stage where every day there's a new person jumping in and someone we're trying to confirm who we just need to get them filed and moving forward, but we're really close.
Okay, so there's some apparent problems at the top of the ticket. I mean, Biden isn't polling very well. And so a lot of those the coalition that elected him last time, some of those groups aren't quite there yet, if they'll get there. So since you're the youngest leader, maybe you can like explain to us, I think he definitely seems to have a problem with the youth vote, or maybe anybody under 40. So what's missing there? What can he do, or what can you do in your races to help bolster him? Because ultimately, Tammy Baldwin, has kind of her own campaign, and certainly the Biden campaign has a lot of offices, but they're depending upon a lot, I think, from the grassroots this time around.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are working really hard to ensure that everyone running as a Democrat in the Assembly has locally rooted talking points for why Joe Biden has helped their community and how he will do that going forward. I have my list in front of me from Racine. I got this from our mayor, Corey Mason, who told me that without federal dollars coming in from the Biden administration, we would not have purchased the electric bus fleet, we would not have moved forward on our health clinic, had additional funding for police and fire and violence prevention grants, started a youth employment program, opened a financial empowerment center, and funded 6 major road projects just in Racine. And those are the kind of things that people feel in their lives, but they may not connect to President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. And so we are going to make sure that everyone is prepared when they are out on the doors to talk about those things. Because I have had the voter at the door who says, I just don't know. I'm not sure that I'm feeling excited about this election and participating. But then when you have a longer conversation, you found out that their daughter actually went to the Financial Empowerment Center in Racine and it helped them figure out how to get a loan for their first home. Then all of a sudden they feel a little bit better about Joe Biden, right? So I think that's going to be core to our strategy, is making sure that folks understand that those impacts that they felt over the last 4 years are tied to this administration. And I also think that we are just going to see continued support for the president grow as we get closer to this election. Trump hasn't been as, let's say, present in the media as he has been previously. And I think the more he gets out and the more he's asked about a nationwide abortion ban, about overturning election results, about his actual plans for supporting working families who are having a hard time making ends meet, you are going to see President Joe Biden's support grow. And I think that's especially true amongst young people who have to live in this country, who have to raise families in this country, and who want a president who's actually looking out for them and their families. Okay,
but some warning signs there for Biden. The uninstructed vote, double digits in Wisconsin. It's like he's like the Velcro president right now. I mean, the top line economic numbers seem good. He can come to Racine County and tout the Microsoft thing, but there's all these sort of nagging doubts. It's just like it seems to be holding back younger folks from committing, minority folks from committing, and it's just like it's already May.
Well, we're still a ways out, right? So it's May, and there's a lot of work to be done to talk about the president's accomplishments before November. I talked to a number of people in my community who voted uninstructed after the primary, and every person that I talked to said that they had concerns about how things were going in the Middle East, but they planned to vote for Joe Biden in the November election. And I think that is going to be true for almost everyone who voted uninstructed in the spring primaries. They showed up to vote. And they showed up to vote because they believe that voting matters, and they know that President Joe Biden is going to be the leader we need as we handle nuanced relationships in foreign nations. I do think, of course, there's work to do to support working families to make ends meet, and I think that those macroeconomic numbers aren't always felt by families, and so our job is to talk about the policy we have proposed and the policy that we will put into place that will help working families with the cost of prescription drugs and child care and housing. Those are all areas of policy that we've worked on. We haven't been able to move those forward in Wisconsin, but we hope that we will be able to once we get those Democratic majorities.
Student loans?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, the abortion issue. So, I try to think what has changed between 22 and the last elections and now? What's changed, where Democrats outperformed a lot because of the abortion issue, and now what's holding Democrats back?
Well, I would say the very practical thing that's changed in Wisconsin is people do have access to abortion again, and that's a really good thing. But we still don't have statutory protections for abortion in Wisconsin, and the status of abortion here, I would say, remains tenuous. So it's not an issue that is always top of mind for voters, but once you remind them that there's discussion of a nationwide abortion ban, and that could impact Wisconsin, and that we have no protections in state law or the Constitution for abortion, they say that that's a really important issue to them. And I find that on the doors. So it is our job to make sure that people understand that their rights are at risk and that there are people running for office right now who would take away their rights.
Okay, so what are the drivers? I mean, we are still a little ways out, but come November, what are going to be the drivers? Is it going to be Biden's age? Is it going to be the economy? Is it going to be abortion? Is it going to be individualized things, Gaza? I mean, how do you see when you're talking about the issue template? Is there like one that rises above the others?
So I would say the election I really look to, of course, really high turnout election, a lot of spending here in Wisconsin was Janet Protasiewicz's election. And I knocked on doors quite a bit in that election. And what I heard about a lot, of course, was abortion. And I also heard quite a bit about democracy. We, as the Assembly Democrats, had been talking about gerrymandering for quite a long time, but most people in Wisconsin were not in the weeds on gerrymandering. People understood gerrymandering after that election because of the amount of money that was spent talking about the threats to democracy in our state. And I think people understand that Trump is a threat to our democracy. And I think especially for those young voters, they get that. And they might have some qualms with specific actions of President Biden, but they understand, again, that they are going to have to live in this country. Their families are going to be growing up here, and they want a president who respects the rule of law and who is doing the work to make their lives better. I guess I'll leave it at that.
What did you think of the decision to do debates and do them early?
I think it's good. I think it's important, again, that the voters hear directly from Donald Trump and that they learn what he stands for, what his plans are for the coming administration. I would love to hear if there's anything on the docket for him besides consolidating his own power and giving handouts to his wealthy friends and donors. I would love to hear what his plans are to support families in this country who, again, are having a hard time making ends meet and who need politicians in office who are going to look out for them.
So you're with the Biden playbook. It's a choice. At the end, it's a choice, and you illustrate the choice. The problem, I guess, is that some people think that RFK Jr. is a choice, or Cornel West is a choice, or Jill Stein is a choice. In Dane County, right? You can't say Jill Stein without getting a Hillary Clinton supporter upset. But I mean, so there are these other, like, you could see scenarios in which people vote for Tammy Baldwin and then don't vote for Biden.
Of course.
So but again, what you're explaining here is your job is you're going to get people to the polls, and then you're going to have to make sure that they do the top of the ticket or support the entire ticket, except we're in a state of ticket splitters.
Yes, we are. And there will be people who split ticket vote this November. We are going to go out there and we are going to talk about the work that our folks have done. And I think that's how we get people to vote up and vote down. But I do think that Assembly candidates who are running really inspiring campaigns, again, in communities that haven't seen competitive races in a long time, are going to be a huge part of the enthusiasm in this state. Another community that was really gerrymandered that has now been restored is Sheboygan. This is a place that hasn't had a competitive election in a long time. We have just an amazing candidate there in Joe Sheehan, who is a 20-year school superintendent who ran the Economic Development Corporation, who is beloved in that community. There were some other people who wanted to run here as Democrats. And as we talked to them and we told them, Joe Sheehan's interested in running, they were like, you know what, I'm not going to do this actually. Joe Sheehan is an amazing person and I love him and I want him to be our candidate. And that's the kind of folks who are stepping forward now that there's a real opportunity to go get a Democratic majority. And they are putting absolutely everything they have into these races. All of our candidates in targeted districts are going to be out on doors at least 5 times a week. They've committed to that. They are going to be making a whole lot of fundraising calls. We are going to be doing the same. And that is going to mean that we have candidates who are not only able to define themselves locally and have their voters understand who they are and what they care about, but also drive that turnout that we need.
How would you gauge the enthusiasm level from on the recruitment scale? Did you have to go find the candidates, or did they sometimes find you?
So I led recruitment alongside our staff at the Assembly Democrats 2 years ago when we still had our gerrymandered maps. Folks might remember we got the maps finalized April 15th, so we had 6 weeks to recruit last time. And I'll be honest, we were going out and we were calling a lot of people, right? Cold calls to districts saying, hey, we know this is going to be a really tough race, but we would really love if you'd run. We got your name from so-and-so. This year, I think we got over 100 calls in the first week from people who wanted to run after we got the new maps, and then those calls have continued coming in. A lot of the people who were running, I'll point again to Yee in Wausau, he was in immediately. And he was incredibly excited to do that, and everyone locally was ready to support him. There, of course, are places where we're also going out and sort of doing some prospecting, and in all of these competitive districts had multiple conversations with folks who wanted to run. And we talked to them about their capacity, about their relationships in the community, about their professional backgrounds, right, about the ability to get out and do the work, and chose candidates, our supporting candidates who we feel confident can go flip these seats.
So Robin Voss was here before you.
Yes.
He was mostly talked about his recall, but at any rate, he did talk about what's to come. And being the canny speaker that he is, he laid down a marker. He said that Democrats will get 45 seats. So, you going to beat that?
Governor Tony Evers got 52 on these maps. So we think we can get 52 seats. I think that's entirely possible. It is turning out those same voters. The Democrats are there. The high watermark for us, of course, is that Tammy Baldwin would get 58 under these maps. That's a high watermark. We're not all Tammy Baldwin. However, the voters are there. The voters are there, and we just have to go out and we have to run incredibly strategic and thoughtful campaigns. We have to talk directly to voters, and we have to communicate our plan for the state of Wisconsin.
Okay, so I've been asked this question a lot, about gerrymandering in general. What happens if Democrats don't get one of the seats, one of the houses? Will the new maps be successful in some way? I'm not asking you to admit that you wouldn't get to your goal. I'm just saying, what happens if there are only narrower margins? Is that better for democracy, or does that achieve a goal that the fight for the new maps was about?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I would say unequivocally yes. These maps are true 50-50 maps. As I said, 10 seats that Joe Biden would have won or lost by 2 percentage points. That gives a huge number of voters across the state a lot of agency in deciding who they are electing and which party is going to be the majority in the state legislature. It is a big lift for us to flip 15 seats in 1 year, no question. Do I think we're building the infrastructure to do it and have the candidates to do it? I do. I think it's entirely possible. And voters having the ability to decide the outcome of legislative elections is really important for our democracy. It was extremely clear to me since I was elected about 6.5 years ago that a lot of people were disengaged from the legislative process because of how gerrymandered the maps were. People in my own community would say, why should I drive hours to wait more hours to testify on the state budget when I know what's going to happen, when I know that they are not going to put in the resources we need for lead pipe removal in Racine or K-12 schools or whatever it is. Wisconsin was not a functioning democracy with those gerrymandered maps, and it is going to be a functioning democracy moving forward. And that is a huge win on the campaign side and on the legislative side, where 2 years ago, we had a statistic that we often cited, which is that only 2% of bills proposed by Democrats even got a hearing in the state assembly. That number has gone up to a little over 5% this session, so we've made some progress. But I expect that it's going to go up quite a bit more next session. And of course, if we have a majority, we are going to get a whole bunch of bills passed. But if we're close, we are still going to get a lot of bills passed, and Republicans are going to have to work with us in a way that they have not for over a decade.
Okay, so Voss's opinion was different. I'm not, you wouldn't be shocked by that. But I think he was saying, my memory is that, we'll be more united, and therefore, it won't be that different. But if you have, I think, if I may expand upon this, I think you're saying if you have more swing seats, right, you'll have more people who are free agents, so to speak. They don't necessarily are sticking with the party on a certain vote. Is that, I mean, do you think that is what might take place if there are just simply narrower margins?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we already started to see it this year when the new maps went into place. More trouble for Robin Voss keeping his caucus together on some issues. A couple of years ago, before I was on the Joint Finance Committee, I worked with colleagues to try to push forward the Badger Care expansion. And we had Republican legislators who were really soft on that issue, right? Who frankly wanted to support the Badger Care expansion because it was really tough for them to go home and explain to their constituents why we were leaving those federal dollars on the table. But we also had Robin Voss, who said to them, absolutely not, who I believe brought folks in a room, reminded them of the talking points, and said, no one is soft on this issue anymore. People are not going to do that. When they have to go home and win a 50-50 seat year after year, and they have to answer really tough questions about why they didn't support marijuana legalization or further investments in K-12 schools or gun safety, these are overwhelmingly popular issues that the Republican legislature has all but ignored, and they're just not going to be able to do that when they have to win seats like this.
Okay, so I think, though, an argument against that, and this is maybe this is a political science argument. I don't want to belabor it, but this past session, I think you can't help but see there's these big issues that had not passed for many sessions passed. You had shared revenue, you had local tax options in the Milwaukee area, you had the Brewers bill, you had private and public school funding. I'm probably missing a couple, bipartisan major alcohol dereg or re-reg effort. So, I mean, all that happened in what you said was a dysfunctional democracy because of the gerrymandered maps. So what's the explanation then?
Well, if memory serves, all those things happened after we had the election of Justice Janet Protasewicz, after a case was filed with the Supreme Court saying we're challenging these gerrymandered maps, and after Republicans started to understand that things were changing. People had been talking about shared revenue for years and years and years. Red communities, blue communities, purple communities. All of a sudden, there was some interest in addressing shared revenue when Republican legislators were going to have to go back home and explain to their communities why they couldn't afford to fund EMS or police or fire or public health or parks or keep the pool open in the summer for kids. Things started changing this year, and that is because those new maps were coming and because members of the Republican caucus in seats that they expected to become more purple knew that they had to take these issues, these local issues, more seriously.
Okay, so let's hear from questions from all of you. Raise your hands, and you can shout it out. Jimmy, go ahead.
40 states have already done it successfully. How do we become 41?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wish I had a straightforward answer, but then we'd probably have done it already. I think we all know that really the major reason that it hasn't happened in Wisconsin is Robin Voss. He has personally decided that he is not going to support Badger Care expansion. But I know that there are multiple members of the Senate and the Assembly Republican caucuses who would like to vote in favor of that. And so we are just going to continue having those conversations with individuals, particularly as we get closer to next year. I have no doubt that the governor is going to include it again in his budget, and we are going to have more leverage in the state budget process next year than we have had. And so we are going to use that to accomplish some of our top priorities, and that is certainly among them.
Thank you very much for being here today. It's been a chance to learn a little bit about you. Southeastern Wisconsin, you know, most people who are in Madison can't think about anything about this area of the state. And I think it we took a few minutes to talk about that. Obviously, you grew up in that area. I grew up in that area, but people here don't seem to know much about what happens related to jobs. And you know, there's that place called Microsoft. Yes. And nobody talks about that. And we don't even talk about Foxconn anymore. And there's a good reason why that. And look at what the Democrats did to help out with the curve, I think, for us to do a better job with jobs. And I think it'd be good for people to learn more and Kenosha as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're talking. Okay, so jobs in southeastern Wisconsin and the Microsoft deal.
Yes, it's a great question, and I can promise you that I will be talking about Microsoft between now and November and beyond. Most folks in this room are probably aware, but the announcement, I think that was just last week, is over 2,000 jobs in construction and then over 2,000 long-term jobs in the area in that new plant, which is a huge deal for our community. That's in Mount Pleasant. That's a new part of the 66 district that I represent, so we are thrilled.
So you're D-Microsoft now.
Oh, yes, D-Microsoft. So Racine and Kenosha and our part of the state, of course, has long been a manufacturing stronghold. Fortunately, recently, Case, New Holland, announced several hundred jobs were leaving the area, and they're moving to Mexico. My dad, who went to Case High School, would tell me about when people would graduate or even drop out of Case High School and go down to Case and get a job on the line and have a great job for their entire career, be able to support their families, be able to retire, be part of a union. It's not the same, right? A lot of those jobs are now gone. Racine has actually had the highest unemployment rate in the state for, I believe it's still correct, my entire life, 32 years. And that is because of a lot of those manufacturing jobs leaving and really struggling to figure out what we're going to do to replace them. Having Microsoft come in is a huge shot in the arm to our community. They are indicating that there are more jobs to come, and we have a huge opportunity to be part of the data and tech space as well as renewable energy space. They're going to need a lot of energy to run that data center, and people in our part of the state are ready to do that hard work and to get those jobs. So we're really excited about that. But it's been a hard stretch. UAW, I think, told me they're going to be under 200 members at our local, and I have heard numbers, over the last several decades getting up to 24, 30,000 members, right, within our lifetimes. Not my lifetime, let's say, this room's lifetimes. And so that's a real loss, and that's been hard, and that has caused all sorts of challenges for people in our community. But it does seem like the tides are turning, and the president of Microsoft said himself that without the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act and without CHIPS and science, they would not be there. We, of course, need that local infrastructure. It's good that we are ready to accept Microsoft into our community, but it would not have happened without Joe Biden. And that, again, is something that we are going to be talking about quite a bit between now and November, because a lot of families in our area are going to benefit from Microsoft being in Racine.
Okay, but you did say it. These aren't the same sort of jobs. It's not the same sort of climate. Those UAW numbers are shocking. I mean, so, the AMC plant and the Chrysler plant and the Chrysler engine plant, in Kenosha. And those are bellwether counties. Whoever wins those tends to, they're not a certainty, but if you win Racine and Kenosha County, you're in pretty good shape to win the election in the rest of the state. So, and yet, Trump has had success there, and he's made appearances there. And I'm just wondering about the climate of or defining Trump's appeal, or how to undercut Trump's appeal in that area, in your area.
Yeah, so just one piece that I will note, something I was really pleased to see with the announcement of these jobs coming into the area, is that the educational institutions, high schools, tech colleges, UW system, are already working to train people for those jobs. So you can't graduate from Case High School and go get a great job that's going to support your family and get you to retirement without some additional training or without some further education. But though that work is happening, I was talking to someone from the plumbers and steam fitters last week who's got people working out at Microsoft. They are training more people. They know more work is coming, and once they're specialized to do this kind of work, they are going to have huge opportunities in the years ahead. And those folks who are working in that AI data center, that is the future. Whether we like it or not, we all need to figure out how to work with AI, and we need to train people to work in that space. So I will just note that I think is really important, that we are going to be preparing our community to take advantage of those jobs. And again, I really think that our focus is going to be on drawing that connection for every voter. It'll be 1, 2, maybe 3 degrees of separation, right, between everyone in Racine County and Microsoft. And that is going to be a really big deal in the years ahead.
So handicap the first congressional district race based on some of what you're talking about here, about the bellwether counties and Barca running against Style, and how your efforts mesh with that first congressional district campaign.
Sure. Well, I suspect that just about every person in this room knows Peter Barca, and the same thing is true in the first congressional district, because Peter Barca has been everywhere and continues to be everywhere. He represented this area before, and he can do it again. Of course, he is taking on an incumbent who I'm sure will be a top priority for Republicans to protect him in this election, but Peter Barca is getting support from national organizations and, of course, from organizations in the state who recognize that winning this seat could be essential to a majority in Congress and that this area will be critical for the presidential. So what I've found is talking about how all of these things layer together is really persuasive for those volunteers, right, who might want to sit home and watch a show on Saturday morning, but who understand that they have a true superpower. In Racine, they could help win an assembly race, a Senate race, a congressional, a Senate, and decide the presidential. And from the numbers that I'm seeing, Wisconsin could very likely decide the presidential again this year. And I do think that those volunteers are going to understand that, those volunteers who power the campaigns that get people out, and voters as well.
Yeah, there hasn't been a real race in the first CD. I don't know, I guess Iron Stash kind of ran a race, got a lot of notoriety anyway. Yeah. But I mean, and it's been redistricted, of course. Yeah. But are you confident that the district, the layout, is amenable to a Democratic victory?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are really going to be focused on turnout, of course, in Racine and Kenosha and some of the bluer parts of the district. Peter is getting out everywhere. And again, he's someone who has an amazing record, a long record of public service, of fighting tooth and nail for the communities that he represents, of working across the aisle when he needs to without compromising his values. And I do think that's what voters want right now. So he just has to get out, and he has to communicate the work that he's doing and has done. And we all are going to be doing everything we can, too, to make sure that people in our area understand that they could, in addition to deciding many other important contests, help decide control of Congress, with this very important election. And Peter's putting in the work. Again, I think everyone in this room probably knows Peter Barca, and if you know anything about him, it's that he puts in the work.
Okay, well, I think we've come to a nice place to conclude. I want to thank you, Assembly Democratic Leader Greta Neubauer. I want to thank our sponsors, Walmart, AARP Wisconsin, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, Xcel Energy, American Family Insurance, and Hush Blackwell Strategies. So we'll see you here next month on June 11th and June 20th. Thanks very much for attending, and we'll see you next time.
As the state's leading property and casualty insurance trade association, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance plays a crucial role in safeguarding Wisconsinites. Alliance members provide vital insurance coverage, ensuring financial protection for individuals, businesses, and communities across the state. In times of need, they act as a reliable resource, helping residents recover from unforeseen events. Ultimately, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance and its members contribute to the resilience and well-being of Wisconsin families and businesses by offering essential protection and support. You have been watching a production of Wisconsin Eye, your unfiltered window into legislative deliberations and public policy programming, where our mission is to provide Wisconsinites an opportunity to access the legislative process and connect with conversations that inform our citizenry. Please consider supporting our mission, and thank you for watching. Wisconsin Eye, policy made public.